today I am interviewing the Quantum Buddha. So, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Virr Haria, as you mentioned, Quantum Buddha. A little bit of history about me, I suppose, that I've been, working in this field for about 4 years now. I've been learning in this field for over 8, maybe 9 years even at this point. And I've, been very fortunate, I think, to attend a lot of workshops and events through people like Tony Robbins and John Lee Martini and Joseph Spencer. People might have heard about those people. And also something that feels kind of unique to me is I grew up as a Jain. It's a religion found in India, and it's very similar kind of philosophy to Buddhism. So I feel like I had a bit of a head start when it comes to spirituality.
Definitely, I think you did.
Yeah.
So, your website, it opens with you built the life, it still doesn't feel like enough. So, when did you personally realize this was true and what did you think was missing?
Yeah, it's a really good question. For me, it I really would say that I was building a business in 2021. No, 2020, in fact, sorry. And this obviously COVID happened and everything. And I had a point where I really thought everything was going really well. And I just had a moment where everything fell through. And it just really took that everything kind of crashing down to for me with work specifically for me to really reevaluate my life and say, is this actually working? That sort of crash, that crumble for me really made me think about the fact that am I living the life that I want to live? And then, I worked on things for a year, I would say, with a therapist because I was just got depressed and, found myself in a bit of a dark place, and realized that I wanted to um live a very different life. I'd been on this path of building a technology business and realized that ultimately that was where I came from and that was where I started with, trying to create this technology business, but it wasn't what I actually wanted. It was just what felt sensible. I was chasing a version of success, looking at my brother and my other people in my family and sort of role models and things that it wasn't my version of success. And that caused me to actually then decide to spend a good couple of months actually figuring out what is my purpose, what is my version of success. And that, so I'd say really the starting point for that was 2020, having that moment of like everything seeming really good, even in the midst of COVID, things seemed like okay, they were working, they were going well, and then that one kind of moment of this isn't working anymore.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it happens to many people. Sooner or later, they start to question. And your work, it really emphasizes that the mind gets the memo, but the nervous system didn't. Now, there's a lot of talk at the moment about the nervous system and how do you bridge the gap between, the mind and the nervous system?
Yeah, this is a really good question. So for me, it really comes down to I know a lot of people in the personal growth space, personal development, spirituality, whatever you want to call it, and they're very focused on, maybe reaching some kind of awakening or realization or, epiphanies and coming to understand yourself more. And that's great. It's like it's very important part of the journey to understand yourself. But when people then get to a point where they're observing themselves doing the thing that they've come to become aware of, but they're not actually changing their behavior, that's, when they get frustrated. And what I've really come to understand in my journey is that you can understand something mentally, but until you actually embody that change, nothing shifts in your reality. And the way to embody that change is through physical practices that take what you've understood and shift them into your body. And essentially, what that really means, what it looks like in practice, is creating space for new actions and new pathways in your brain and showing your brain and your body, showing your body mostly that it can be in a situation that it was previously triggered in, and there is a different way out.
Yeah.
Ultimately that's what it is. You have to be able to be in that situation that previously triggered you and take a different path, choose a different path. And it happens slowly, through very small actions and very small moments where you expose yourself a little bit to that sort of trigger. But even before that, it's just about creating that safe space, you know, for you to even be able to experience those things that triggered you and change the reality there. So that's what I would say is, it's really about creating a safe space, choosing differently.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And particularly for me as well, I've doing a lot more body work as well as breath work.
Yeah.
Spent so much time kind of in a trance state that I've been ignoring the body, but you've got to have the body, mind, spirit, soul all together, haven't you? And it's just, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really lovely to be in that trance state. And I've honestly spent a lot of time in that. In fact, I was telling you about the fact that I've been ill for the last week. And week before that, I was in some workshops and experiences that t put me in that trance state. But, why did I get ill? It's because I came back and had a lot of our other social things planned. So I was taking a lot of time away from myself, and I didn't make the time for myself to really ground and embody those things that I'd learned from that experience. So, just to be clear as well, like I'm still learning this. I'm still somebody who is on the journey. I'm not no expert really, but I very much found myself being able to be aware of this and go, okay, well, that's the learning point, for me to go, let me act differently next time. Next time I do that kind of workshop, let me take a week for myself.
Yeah,
And don't,
definitely.
don't commit to it if I can't do that. That's a very important point.
Yeah. Practice what you preach as well, definitely.
Exactly. Yeah, I'd rather be somebody who's honest about the fact that I'm on the journey and still making the mistakes rather than you know, try and make it seem like I'm not, because the truth is people will see that in reality.
We're all still learning. If we're still here, we're still learning.
Yeah, exactly.
So your stress test, the stress pattern test identifies archetypes. So you've got like the driven achiever and the selfless pleaser, things like that. Which pattern did you first recognize in yourself and how did you start to transform it?
It was actually a combination of patterns that I realized in myself. The selfless pleaser pattern was very easy to identify in myself. I've massive people pleaser, and my mum before me was also a massive people pleaser, and I went through a year of living with a friend of mine, and a big journey that I had to go on that year was learning boundaries, so that we could live together better and that we could actually have a much better relationship whilst living together, because of some of the things that caused us through assumptions, through the lack of communication, to have tension and have frustrations and not be able, just find ourselves not in harmony living together. And then when we had boundaries, when we brought that communication in to say this is how I would like it to be, or this is, this doesn't work for me, or something along those lines, it allowed me to then have a much better relationship with living with that person. And so that was the first one. And then very quickly afterwards, I sort of discovered the other ones as well. You know, Part of coming back from traveling to the UK was actually me deciding to say, okay, I'm going to face my shit. I'm going to really, and it came from a conversation with a friend of mine, where we were on a night out, and I just sort of had like a bit of an anxiety attack, and we talked about it afterwards. We had a very heart-to-heart conversation, and he said to me like, "You've got to face your shit. Stop running away from it, and get the help, get the therapy." And so I use that as a sort of something to called me out to say, yeah, you know what? I teach this stuff, but do I actually practice it? Do I actually embody it myself? And so I went and got therapy with the NHS talking therapy service. And then once I'd finished 6 months of that, and really, I got to a point where I was able to recognize that all of the problems that I thought were separate problems in my life all came down to self-worth in some way, shape, or form. You know, things to do with health and relationships, things to do with work, things to do with, my physical space, whatever it might be to do with, it was all down to self-worth in some way. And that really got me to this amazing point because I said, oh my God, it's not 10 different problems I need to solve. It's this one thing. And that was an amazing moment to get to then then seek out private therapy to keep working on it. And did that for a year to really work through, okay, what even is self-worth? What is self-worth? How do you go about increasing your self-worth? And also in different areas of your life as well. So that was a very important part of the journey was actually, but that came from flight, came from me running away and being somebody who was constantly moving, constantly traveling, constantly changing city, and then being called out by a friend of mine. So, again, like I really want to emphasize, like I am very grateful to my friends for being so honest with me and being able to sort of give me that push that I needed in these moments.
Definitely. The best friends are the honest ones, even
Yeah,
if even if it's a tough truth.
yeah, friends and family as well. Definitely my both of my brothers have been there in that situation with me as well. And I really want to emphasize I've not done any of this by myself. 100% it's come from support of these people who have been there to call me out in the moments where I've needed it.
Yeah, makes such a difference, doesn't it? To have support.
Yeah,
Important.
definitely.
So the next question is an interesting one. That for a lot of people as well, there's often a moment when you realise that the path that you're on, it's not your own path. It's what you're doing because it's expected of you. So
Yeah.
did you know that moment? You kind of touched on it briefly before when you were thinking about moving away from the more the technology job. But was there one particular point, one day, or
Even honestly, before that point, I would say it was when I had my own first spiritual awakening back in 2018. I was traveling. I was in Australia at this point. I'd been traveling for a year, and I was sitting at the end of this hostel garden, looking out into a valley and feeling sorry for myself because I'd injured my knee and I couldn't, sort of walk and I was running out of money. And I felt like, oh no, like my travels are going to end here. And obviously, at this point, I didn't even know about the flight thing, but I was still very much in flight, trying to keep escaping things. And eventually, I got to a moment of gratitude to be able to say, wow, something just flipped in me whilst I was looking out into this valley. I just looked as far out as I could, and I had a moment where the flip switched, and I switched from feeling sorry about myself to feeling this intense gratitude to say, what do I have to feel sorry for? Like I'm on the other side of the whole world. I've been traveling for a year and I've met all of these amazing people. I've done all these amazing things. I'm in this amazing place. And it really allowed me to say, there's nothing to feel sorry for in this moment. I created this. I created this whole experience that I've had over this last year to be sitting where I am now. So if I can create this, what else can I create? You know?
exactly?
And that also then led me to say, well, at that point I'd just finished 4 years of studying computer science at university, and then I'd been traveling for a year. So I was previously in the mindset of like, okay, I'm going to get a job doing computer science and I'm going to become a programmer and that's going to be my life. So this sort of spiritual awakening helped me to go, that's not the only path, you know. I can totally I can do anything that I want to do in this life. What do I want to do? And I have to be honest, like that is the hardest question anyone has to answer, I think. Because I came back to the UK after that and spent some time with my brother, and I was figuring out what is it that I want to do. And I originally sort of started going along the path of what quantum bitters would become. I started to actually do a little bit of courses to become a life coach and that kind of thing, and just a bit of tasting and things here and there. But eventually, I ended up building the technology consulting business instead. And this is where, it's so funny because even though I was so expanded to say, wow, I can do anything, there was a part of me that was afraid that said, but stick to what you know almost. So although I wasn't doing programming, I was doing technology consulting because I was still trying to stay close to what I'd already learned. And I was afraid of going like too far out, too far away from what I'd learned. But the funny thing is that before I even studied um, computer science, I actually wanted to be a doctor, and I applied to study medicine. So, um, the whole point of all of that I'm trying to bring up is until that point, I was following what we'd been taught at school was, go to school, get good education, get a job, get a house, get a career, get a car, get a family, and then you're like, that's what your life should look like. And then that point of that spiritual awakening was like, I can do absolutely anything. There is no script, there is no path. You can do anything. And even after that moment, there was still a lot of back and forth have been over the last 8 years trying to figure out what that is. And there's probably more that I'll expand into later, but really that was kind of the moment where something changed and I was like, I can do anything I want.
You can. We all can create. And particularly, I think when you mention the gratitude, when you
Yeah.
focus on the attitude of gratitude, it brings more things to be grateful for. You
Yeah.
raise vibration, so vibrationally, you're on a level where you are ready to create better things and a better life. And it's
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that one of my mentor talks about is your reticular activating system. It's the thing that makes it like, okay, when you've bought a car that is, let's say, it's a Polo, then you start seeing Polos everywhere. You're driving around, you're like, oh, there's another, oh, there's another one. Like I've just parked up to, in my parking lot and realized that the car next to me is the same car. And I was like, that's like, what's the chances of that? That's crazy. But the thing is, it's because it's somehow there's a part of your brain that focuses on it because it's now something that's part of you. It's like your identity is sort of tied towards that thing. And so if gratitude is part of who you are and part of your identity, then you're going to, be looking out for more things to be grateful for. But if it's not, then you're going to be looking out for the opposite.
and you'll get the opposite as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like just to kind of bring that, like the reason I brought that up was to say, like, this is a part of your brain that is designed to bring more of what you already know. And that, ultimately ends up creating a cycle of like, if you keep doing the same things, you'll get what you've always got. So to have the life that you want to have, you have to be the person who you've never been before.
Yes, you certainly do. So, in your view, what's the most misunderstood aspect of spiritual awakening, particularly, in the modern world?
Yeah, this actually touches on what we talked about earlier when it comes to the nervous system, because to me, it's the idea of spiritual bypassing. What we talked about earlier about like being in that spiritual realm, having this amazing journey. It could be from meditation, it could be from substances, it could be from, whatever, music, for example, can take you to a really magical place, but you can be essentially escaping what your current reality is by putting yourself into that spiritual place. And, it's when you don't acknowledge what is, what you don't want to sit with, if that makes sense. You've got things in you that are like, it's painful to acknowledge, like, oh, I didn't wake up as early as I wanted to, or, I haven't been eating as well as I wanted to, or, I think a lot of spiritual people can get in this trap of like, and I do this as well, by the way. This is very much part of the fight method, sort of persona, especially is, you sort of keep giving yourself positive messages, positive messages, positive messages, and you ignore the things that are going wrong. So this again has happened in my life where I've been really focused on like creating, and I've been in a very spiritual sense mode and creative mode, and I've been really driven, but at the same time, the dishes are piling up in the sink. The rubbish bin is piling up with rubbish. Like things are getting disorganized. Like the flat needs a Hoover, and there's just like the maintenance is not there as well. That sort of thing. So that's just an example of it. But really, it's like not grounding yourself, and like you said, being in alignment, mind, body, and soul. Um, and trying to just stay up there and be positive all the time. Because I've seen even some of my previous mentors, um, who have been like amazing at teaching people to be in that spiritual place and be in the vision and everything, but they themselves haven't been able to sit with the negative. And I've actually had to challenge them and say, but you're not actually acknowledging this negative part. And then they sort of keep coming back to the positive, keep coming back to the positive. So I think what people tend to miss is their ability to sit with the negative. I heard this quote actually recently. It said, wanting a positive experience is a negative experience, but
Yeah.
accepting a negative experience is a positive experience. Because when you have desire and that desire it creates expectation. And then when that expectation is unmet, then you ultimately will just end up disappointed. But when you accept your current reality, you accept, like, let's say, for example, oh, it's too cold right now. But then you could be fighting it. You could be sitting here and like really tense and frozen up, or you could take a few deep breaths and relax and say, okay, well, I'm gonna go put on a jumper instead of sitting here and being like, oh, I can't step away from this to go and put on a jumper because I'm cold. You actually just allow yourself to have that break and to be human. I
Yeah.
think that's really where the pitfall comes in, is like allowing yourself to be human and to be humble and to sit with the negative, sit with your shit is what I like to say.
Yeah. You need to. And just be as well. Sometimes you need to just be. There's too much doing and not enough being. And, we're
100%.
beings. And, talking of being and being still, what role does stillness play in your practice, especially for those who are kind of just running all over the place?
Yeah, exactly what you just said. We spend too much time doing and not enough time being. So, what does it mean to be? I mean, this comes back to meditation for me, ultimately, is that, meditation, people, I think, get confused, and a lot of people have asked me, like, what even is meditation? How do I do it correctly? And I think what people uh, fail to realize is that there is no way to do it correctly. The way to do it correctly is to not try and do anything.
Mm.
And then you're meditating. Great, good job. So but what I do try and encourage people is to say meditation ultimately is an opportunity to practice not doing anything and releasing the pressure and the expectation on yourself to have to do anything. So letting go of like, okay, oh, I've got to do these things. I've got to, call this person and wash up this and fill my car with petrol and whatever things that you need to do. Letting go of all that pressure and tension and letting yourself just go, it's okay for me to not be doing any of that right now. And it's okay for me to not be thinking about any of that right now. But it's also okay if those thoughts come up. It's also not about stopping those thoughts, but it's about being able to step back from those thoughts and see them as something that is not what you are. You are not your thoughts. But if you can be the observer of your thoughts, another way to look at this is that you are the sky and everything else is just the weather. If you can step back from actually like, oh, getting caught up in this thought or that thought or that thought, and every time you get caught in the thought, you bring yourself back to stillness, to not doing anything, to not pressuring yourself on anything, to not having any rush to get anywhere, then you practice being able to do that in your life as well whilst you're out and about. Let's say you're at the traffic lights and you've got to like really get somewhere and it's about to turn red and you're trying to like almost race the person next to you to go, who's going to get, in front first. But what if you can in that moment realize like, oh, actually, why am I doing this? I'm just gonna get myself a speeding ticket. Let me just slow down.
Yeah.
I just stop trying to win against the person next to me or against the traffic light and just be and enjoy this drive. And the only thing that will really change in all of this is how much you're able to just enjoy your life rather than feeling you need to survive it. This is the whole thing. I want to help teach people how to thrive, not just survive. And we as humans, like I was saying to my friend, we are so fortunate that we were sitting in a cafe and just surrounded by people. And I was just like sort of a bit, I don't know, overwhelmed by how much noise there was. And I thought for a second, when I was able to take a step back from that in the moment and go, isn't it amazing to be able to hear those people and
Mm.
to be worrying about how much noise there is? Like, we're completely safe sitting at this cafe. There's no tigers coming to chase me sitting at this cafe. There's no hunger or starvation or, like these different kind of threats coming to face me whilst I'm sitting at this cafe. Like we're in history the most fortunate, the most well-lived people that exist in the Western society at least, for sure. And like we get to just exist and thrive. And we do need to cover our basic needs. This is where I talk about Maslow's hierarchy. You need to obviously have security, safety, and but then you get belonging and you get self-expression. Like once you cover your physical safety and your security in life, like everything else is about love. And you get to just exist and do whatever you want, really. So where stillness comes in is those bottom two levels of the Maslow's hierarchy are all about survival. And so your brain is constantly trying to help you survive. Like it's looking out for threats. It's like, okay, the reason that you're trying to like win against that person or the reason that you're trying to get through in the traffic lights really quickly or whatever is because you're trying to survive. It's trying to help you like survive in a better way somehow, because you're stuck in like that fight or your flight or whatever it might be. But if you slow down a little bit, you'd still get there, but you wouldn't be so stressed about it.
Mm. Yeah, it's so important that is to just be present a lot more, and we just don't do it.
Yeah, it's why when we do every time I do a podcast episode, we always do a meditation. And it's because when you see the part of the conversation before and the part of the conversation afterwards, the conversation's always completely different after the meditation. Because that person, whoever we're talking, me as well included, but me and the other person are no longer trying to, like, we're not just like in an excited mode, like, oh, we're doing a podcast, this is really cool. We've managed to slow down a bit and go, what do we actually want to talk about here? Not what's going to be impressive to everyone.
Yeah, let it flow. Go with the flow.
Yeah,
So thing to do. I mean,
yeah,
there's a lot of talk on when you're in the flow state, your brain waves are different anyway. You know,
yeah.
so,
Actually, there's one more thing that I wanted to add to that as well, because like what we're, talking about being versus doing, like doing is very much about why we're trying to do. We're trying to do something to get somewhere. So ultimately, we're trying to achieve something, and we're trying to achieve something. Why do people climb Mount Everest? Often, I'm not saying this is the only reason. I'm not criticizing anyone that does, but it could be to get a sense of achievement that I've managed to conquer this challenge. But that's a feeling.
mm,
You could create that feeling in a different way. And so to just say that like are the things that you're chasing because you actually want them or because you're trying to prove something?
yeah.
And if you allowed yourself to stop trying to prove and stop trying to achieve, what could you receive in your life that you didn't realize was already there? And
Mm,
that's to me doing is about achieving and receive, sorry, doing is about achieving and being is about receiving. It's allowing life to flow to you, to go, I get to sit here in this apartment and be on this call with you right now. I get
Mm.
to spend my life, being a creative person. I've got these paintings on my wall. Like that's something that I've had the opportunity to do and I get to receive like, wow, I am somebody who paints. And that's not me doing something by painting. It's just receiving the fact that that's part of my personality and my identity and going like, okay, well, if that's true, 5, 6 years ago, before COVID, before I started painting and everything, I didn't believe I was a creative person. I genuinely thought that I couldn't be creative. And now looking back at that, I really think like, where did I get that idea from? How could I possibly think that I wasn't creative? Especially if I look at my childhood, like I was creating, all of these drawings and colorings and whatever it might be, and I have a collection of them still from that time, and I'm really proud of that collection, even though they're like just, 6-year-old drawings, but I'm like, but that's me, and again, it comes back to receiving and just going like wow, like my mom loved me so much that she decided to keep those for years. And now I get to have that as a reminder of her love and how loved I am. And even though she's passed away, I can still receive that love by just realizing that truth. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And it's always there. It's beyond space and time, isn't it?
Exactly. And
Energy.
so that comes back to that question of what can you receive if you allow yourself to stop doing and
Yeah.
realize what's already there.
And we're all creative. Yeah. And it can be creative in so many different ways as well. Some people can be creative. They can open the fridge and look what's in and just create a meal. It doesn't have
Yeah.
to be, artistic in, the painting kind of way. So,
One of my
yeah.
brothers is creative with spreadsheets. Like, if when he has a problem, his solution is to make a spreadsheet about it and solve that problem. And that problem will never be a problem again because he's made the spreadsheet. Like, I adore that he's able to do that and genuinely am very inspired by that creativity. And he might think that he's not a very creative person, but I look at it and go like, wow, that's incredible.
He is. Yeah. And you created the Thrive Blueprint to help people move from survival patterns to their thriving identity. So,
Yes.
what does that shift? What does it look like in, somebody's day-to-day life?
That's a very good question. Yeah. So, it's what we were talking about earlier about being able to slow down a little bit and enjoy life a bit more when you're not trying to fight. So, for example, I realized that coming back to the idea of being a people pleaser, because I think a lot of people relate to this, how much was I going above and beyond and doing extra more for other people than was actually required of me? There's nothing wrong with being kind and polite, but ultimately, where all of these things come is where there's a cost to yourself. You know, Staying up late to help somebody with something, that's great. You can do that. But if you keep doing that every day, and keep staying up past the time that it would be beneficial for you to go to sleep for somebody else's benefit, then you're just sacrificing yourself. And ultimately, at one point, that will cause you to no longer be able to be there for that person.
Mm,
So better to put that boundary in place, go to sleep that 1 hour earlier, and be able to stick around for longer. I think like somebody came to me to work with problems to do with like feeling exhausted, feeling tired, and feeling that there was just something a little bit not quite working in their life. And when we actually examined it and came down to it, it was because of, struggling with people pleasing, that, they were staying up late responding to messages from people because they felt an obligation to say like, oh, if these particular people message me, I have to respond no matter what time of day it is. And it just became a conversation to say, why is it that you're doing that? Where did that come from? And then when we were able to dig into the root and not just cause, this is a very important part of the equation is I don't want to solve the problem by putting a plaster on it. For me, the way to solve a problem in a way where it's no longer part of you is to go to the root and go, where did that come from? Where did you first get that idea that you had to behave in this particular way that was putting yourself at sacrifice? And so when we went into that and we figured out where that came from, he stopped feeling the need to stay up late and his behavior changed and he now got a lot more sleep. Like I said, like 1 hour a day more sleep and was able to have that conversation with the person, say to a few people actually to put that boundary in place and say, listen, I'm gonna be going to sleep at this time and I won't be responding to messages after this. And you see that the thing is he's not saying don't message me after this time. He's saying this is what I'll be doing differently. And that's the important thing is I think that um you change your behavior and other people will change how they respond to you. Those other people might not have realized that they were taking advantage of him because they didn't realize that he was going above and beyond and sacrificing himself for that purpose. But then once we put those boundaries in place, have that communication, or sometimes it's not even about actually saying it to the other person, but just acting differently yourself. And that
Yeah.
way, just being able to reclaim a little bit of that, what you're giving other people to yourself. I watched this video literally today that said, you are a superstar. Start acting like it, start treating yourself like it. And it was such an important message because it's saying like, if don't treat yourself like a king or a queen to yourself, then in a way, who else would? Why would anyone else treat you like that if you don't treat yourself like that? And it comes back to that idea of like, if you sacrifice yourself, you know, you've got to give to other people from a full cup yourself.
Yeah.
If your cup is not full and you're emptying out of your cup to give to other people, then your cup is eventually going to be empty. And then, you'll get ill, like I got ill, and then you'll be not be able to help other people in the way that you might want to. So it's counterintuitive for a people pleaser to feel like, oh, I can't go against that. I have to help those people. But actually, then they're not thinking in the long term. And that's the point. All of the four survival mechanisms, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, are not thinking in the long term. They are thinking about short term because where did they come from? They came from, how do I survive this tiger coming to attack me?
Yeah.
So when you're able to rewire that and when you get into that survival mode, your sort of brain narrows your vision, not just like your vision physically, but your thinking processes narrow to say, how can I fight this? How can I get away from this? How can I survive this in some way? And so the thriving mentality is just to dig out the root cause of where that came from so that you no longer feel the need to be in fight or flight in that situation. But also, like we said a bit earlier, creating the safe space for yourself to rewire it in the moment. So comes back to meditation. If you practice meditation, then in the moment where let's say you get angry, and then your normal thing is to get angry, shout at someone, and that could then lead to them crying, and then you feel bad about it, and it's like a negative sort of cycle that causes you to distance people in your life. Well, if you had the ability to pause in that moment and stop yourself from shouting and go, actually, how do I want to handle this? And it's a very quick conversation you have with yourself in your head, but you just go, pause, do it. And, I've had this moment, again, not too long ago, I got really angry at my dad for throwing some of my stuff away. Like, and I genuinely to the point where I was like shouting at him. I was like, I have control. And then I caught it and I was like, hang on a second. This is not what I want to be doing. I was very surprised that I was trying because that's not really a lot of how I spend my time. And so I was able to say, I'm really sorry for chatting at you. Just let me just take a minute to go into the other room and just process whatever is going on with me right now. And I was able to get out of the situation, get myself to another room, take some time to ground and take some deep breaths and realize what was going on. And honestly, I had to sit with it for a little while. I was probably about half an hour before I kind of came back and I was like, okay, this is what's happened. Like I was attached to this thing, but ultimately, this thing was never really mine to begin with. So you were not wrong to throw it away. And I had to have the humility to be able to step down from my high horse and my anger because anger comes from feeling like something was unfair or unjust. And to go, actually, number one, I don't want to be shouting at my dad, or I don't want to be shouting and raising my blood pressure, for example. Number two, um, you know, he's not in the wrong to have done this in the first place, and he made the best decision that he could. And so ultimately, as I take myself out of that survival thinking and bring myself back to rational thinking, like I just come back and I act differently and I go, again, to firstly to say sorry, but to say, I understand. We had a moment in the car with my brother actually, where I actually got very triggered at him. And well, as I sat with it before he got in the car, I realized that I was triggered to feel a sense of abandonment because of, something that happened. It wasn't something that he did. It was something that I ended up in a particular situation waiting for him outside of his house. And I felt, just a sense of abandonment from that. And I had to say to him, look, I'm dealing with this right now. I'm not angry at you, but I'm feeling anger inside of me because I'm triggered back into this past situation. Do you mind if I talk this out with you? And at the end of the day, I was able to give him my perspective. He was able to give me his perspective. There was a bit of emotions, and ultimately, I was like, I was telling him my perspective almost through tears whilst driving because I was trying to really hold back that anger. So this is not, it's not always easy to like be able to hold back that emotion and try and communicate more vulnerably and more honestly in that moment rather than shouting, going, here's what I'm really feeling. It can be difficult, but you can do it. And then once we got that sense of understanding from each other, I was able to say, I understand why you took the actions you took. He understood how I felt, why I felt, and we were able to actually just hug it out and say we love you to each other and then have a really lovely evening. Whereas in the past, that could have completely ruined our evening for both of us.
Yeah.
So, I want to just bring that in as an example of like this happening in my real life like a week ago, 2 weeks ago, that, you can actually change it in the moment, and that's magical.
Yeah, I think then it doesn't linger on because sometimes it can go on for weeks and weeks, can't it? And it's
You can
just,
go on for years. You can hold a grudge against someone for years and then not even realize that you're doing it and then forget why you even did it in the first place.
mm. So the next question is, how has your understanding of spiritual growth evolved since you began your journey? I think this does follow on from what you were saying. And
Yeah.
do you believe now that you didn't believe before?
It's a good question. Let me sit with it for a second. How has my understanding of spiritual growth changed? What do I believe now that I didn't before? I think when I was younger, I was trying to get somewhere with not just with obviously in life and achievement and everything, with work and whatever it might be, but even with spiritual growth, like with my personal development journey. When I was younger, I probably didn't call it spiritual growth, but it was, you know, well, I was on a personal development journey and I was trying to get somewhere. And I was trying to get to this perfect version of myself that I thought existed. say like, oh, I'll do this personal development and then I'll become more confident and I'll become more happy and I'll become more, successful and wealthy and blah blah blah. Like it was a stepping stone to get me to the things that I thought I wanted. And therefore, it was still ultimately about achievement. And I think that's the biggest thing that I could question somebody on is to say, are you on this journey of growth for yourself just because you're trying to get somewhere, just because you're still just trying to achieve something? And it's okay to want, it's okay, it's like perfectly reasonable and acceptable as a human to have desire and to want to get somewhere, but are you doing it from a place of lack, from a place of I don't have that thing and that makes me incomplete, versus now in my spiritual journey, it's very much about who I would love to become, the version of myself I would love to become from a place of like, this is what inspires me. Like I see like Superman, for example, right? He's one of my favorite superheroes because I realize and I recognize in him that he's got all of this amazing strength. But the thing that makes him Superman is the fact that he is so kind. Does that make sense? Like a lot of people look at Superman and go, oh, I want to be like Superman. I want to be as strong as Superman. And I go, I want to be as kind as Superman. I want to be able to be that kind when I'm that strong. And
Mm.
to not use that strength that I've created in myself as a way to have power over others. To go like, oh, I'm better than you because I've, built more physical muscles than you have, for example, or because I can, run a quicker marathon or something like that. But to still have the humility to go, we're still equals. Just because I can run a marathon and you can't, that doesn't mean we're not equals.
Yeah.
And I think that's ultimately for me is like, can you have all of this growth and not let the power corrupt you, essentially, not let the growth itself stop you from realizing that you are equal and you are human and you are, you and everyone else deserve the same level of love, attention, respect, kindness, etc. So I think that is a very important part of the journey is like to stop using it to try and get somewhere and to actually enjoy the now, to just be here on this call with you and really enjoy this, both for the opportunity to speak about what I love, as well as to talk to you specifically, as well as also being able to notice your background, for example, and just go like, oh, that looks really lovely, and I like that color or whatever it might be. Like, there's multiple aspects of what is happening right now that I can appreciate that I'm not thinking about where I want to get to after this call, or even I'm not even thinking about what will this help me achieve. I'm just being present with you completely and enjoying this because once this moment is completed and then it's the next moment, I won't get that moment back. So I
Mm.
can either live that moment being present and enjoying it, and again, not even enjoying it, like just appreciate like being clear of the fact that I get to live it versus I could live this moment and skip past it because I'm worrying about something else or I'm stuck in the past in my head. I'm like, oh, I feel so terrible because of that thing that I said to that person and not be enjoying this. And I think this is one more thing I want to add to this is for me, it comes back to being the observer of your thoughts and being able to see like you don't have to be enjoying pain, let's say, for example. Like, you could be like last week, I was really ill, and I allowed myself to just be ill and go, my God, this sucks. I hate being ill. I hate coughing, and I really don't enjoy, let's say, being in bed all day and not being able to get out of bed and whatever. And I allowed myself to do that and to just be human and appreciate the experience of allowing myself to be human because I was able to also take a step back for that and go, yeah, but you know, it sucks to be ill right now, but last week was pretty great. Or like not even thinking about last week, but to say like in the same moment, Yeah, but my bed's pretty nice, isn't it? You know? Or like, oh, I get to like really enjoy this warmth. Or it could be along the lines of like I'm not trying to just balance it and invalidate it. I'm just trying to think of the right way to really phrase this because it's like I might be able to step back and see, although there is this pain, it will pass. Although there is this pleasure, it will pass. So whichever one it is, appreciate being having to appreciate having lived it because you'll never get it again. And you'll be, I really, just to add to this, there's a sense of like, I can't believe I'm as, 32, for example. Like I can still very vividly remember being 7 years old in primary school or something like that, being in my teacher's classroom and living that particular memory. And like, the sequence of events that have happened from then until now, a lot of those moments are, I hold very vividly in my mind. And I go like, when did it go from then to here? You know? And it really just makes me so aware of how quickly time passes. And like, although, some days can feel like a really long day, last Tuesday when I was in bed all day, I was like, oh my God, this day is never going to pass. But my God, it's been a week since then.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, like time really passes quickly if you don't pay, if you're not present with it. And even if you are present with it, it still passes pretty quickly. So, like, again, it's like, do you want to actually enjoy it and be present, or do you just want to be stuck in the past or the future?
Yeah, and accepting everything's in a state of change, isn't it? You know, it always changes. So, talking of changes, you offer a free stress pattern test. What's the most surprising insight you've gained from working with people as you go through the process?
I created this thinking that um, it would be like life changing for people and they would really love it and they'd like, sort of be wowed by it. Not sort of wowed of like, oh wow, look at this amazing thing you've created, Vera, but like, wow, this has really given me a lot of insight into myself. And it has done that. Like people have been said to me like it really resonates with them, that it really helps them understand themselves more. But a lot of people haven't followed up after that. A lot of people have sort of appreciated the insights, but then gone quiet. And I think that's what surprised me is that like being interested is not the same thing as being ready. And, to be ready for that growth in your life, to be ready for that change in your life, like you've got to choose it, you know?
Yeah,
When I first went to some workshops to learn about super consciousness and some of the things that I teach now, my teacher at the time, my mentor Ryan Pinnock, he said, "Are you ready to go down the rabbit hole?" And he said, "Because once you do, there's no going back."
there isn't.
And that's the thing. It's like when you truly become awakened to like you're you are the creator of your reality. You are responsible for your reality. There's no there's no turning off from that. There's no,
No,
you can't close your eyes and just become unconscious again. Actually, this is a phrase I want to bring in. When you make the unconscious conscious, sorry, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And that was the point that he was trying to make is that are you ready to make the unconscious conscious? Because either you can make it conscious and then you can be the person who writes your own fate, or you can continue to be unconscious and you can allow your fate to be dictated by your life events. And once you become conscious, once you start learning about how to uncover, how you've got to where you are, how you've become the person that you are, how you've created the life you've created, then there's just There's no turning back after that. And you become the master of your own destiny. And that is such a beautiful thing, but it's also terrifying.
And
You know, it comes,
ups and downs, isn't there, along the path? You're thinking, oh, why did I go on this journey in the first place? And then you have the highlights at the end of the low lights.
yeah, it can be pretty terrifying being the captain of your own ship and, facing the waves and the wind and the storms by yourself. But this is the beautiful thing is that ultimately, whether people know or not, they are the captain of their own ship, and it's just whether they realize it or not. And I think that we're really going through a period of time right now where more and more people are becoming awake to that, and more and more people will need help and guidance through how to navigate that from people like you and me who have been living with that realization and that reality for years. And, this is part of the reason why I created this for to help people is because I want to create a a guide, a pathway for people to become conscious, self-led individuals, leaders of themselves. Yeah, because I really love um the song by Michael Jackson, "Man in the Mirror." You've got to start with yourself. You can't change anything else without changing yourself first. And the thing is that, if everyone was able to really tap into themselves and learn how to take off the mask and stop being who they thought they needed to be and really truly connect to and be who they really are instead, the world would be a much better place.
Yeah, it would be so different. So, what's the first step then people can take in terms of like taking off that mask?
Good question. For me, it's just becoming aware that there's even a mask in the first place.
Yeah.
And this is part of what the stress pattern testers help to design people to do is to help to identify the mask. And again, comes back to that realization that like some people aren't ready to take off the mask. Some people aren't ready to face that because the mask keeps you safe. And the question I ask people is, do you want to be safe or do you want to be happy and fulfilled? Because if you want to be happy and fulfilled, come with me. I'll show you how.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't say stuck if you got to take the leap of faith, isn't it? It's like feel the fear and do it anyway, isn't it? A lot of it.
Yeah, it's exactly that. And it's like, also becoming aware of like the weight of the mask as well. What is it costing you to keep pretending like everything's okay, or to keep pushing through when things get tough, or to keep running away from your problems? You know, it's like I could very much talk to all of those. Like it for running away, it's cost me relationships, it's cost me friendships. For fighting through problems and being the achiever, it's cost me health, you know, for it's just really being able to separate yourself from the mask. To say that then the survival patterns, the four different archetypes that are there, each of those, the really important thing that are right at the when they get the result is to say you are not this survival identity. This is a mask. And it's to help them realize people think that they are just stuck in their ways and they can't change. But that's not true. This is what neuroplasticity is all about. We have the ability in our brain to change things. You can teach an old dog new tricks,
You
but
sit. Yeah.
only if it wants to learn.
Mm.
And so that's the point is, are you willing to learn? Are you willing to go through being a bit uncomfortable and a bit uncertain, and that's the biggest thing is if like magic is on the other side of uncertainty, but you've got to be willing to take that leap of faith, like you said, to get to that other side. And my brother has a really good analogy for this actually. He says sometimes you're in a situation where you're on a riverbank and where you want to get to is on the other side of that riverbank, and there's no bridge. And the only way forward is to go through the river. And the river looks deep. And you say, no, I don't want to go. It's too deep. It's too difficult. I'm not gonna go. And you stay stuck there for a while. And then, things start piling up and you get older and, whatever happens, eventually maybe there's something that makes you try it. And you go, maybe there's like a tiger coming and you're like, okay, I've got to get away from this tiger. I'm going to have to go into this river a little bit, for example. Could be, your boss fires you from your job and then something forces you to have to take those steps. You take the first couple of steps into the water to get away from the tiger and you go, oh, this isn't too bad actually. It's quite shallow.
Mm.
And then you keep going and you realize, okay, it's coming up to my knees, it's coming up to my chest, it's coming up to my neck. And you get to that point where I was like, oh, I can barely breathe at this point. Like, but you're halfway across now. So then it's like, well, are you going to go back or are you going to just go forward and get to the other side? Like, you're already halfway. And so obviously some people go back and then that's when they feel like they maybe regress or, they feel like, oh, I've made all this progress, but I'm not getting to where I want to go. Where they're maybe stuck in the middle of that river. But if you keep going and you get to, you realize like, even if your head goes underwater, you keep going, just keep swimming, like Dory says in Finding Nemo, and you get to the other side and you realize, okay, there's a point at which it starts to become shallower again. And then the water goes down from your head to your chest, to your knees, to your feet, and you go, oh, I'm on the other side now. That wasn't too bad.
Mm.
Getting through it felt like a hell of a struggle. But once you're on the other side, you're like, oh my God, why did I put that off for so long?
Yeah, I look forward to it.
Yeah. So, I mean, to be honest, like I'm sure you've experienced this yourself because it's really it's something I'm just giving analogy to something that people go through in their spiritual journey, and it's very like the point really is that it always looks a lot scarier than it actually is
Yeah.
because your brain is designed to keep you safe, but your brain is just a tool.
Yeah, and the universe will only give you what you can actually handle.
Yes, that is very important part as well to realize is that, you exist in this particular time at this particular place, in this particular, earth, for example, right here, right now, with these challenges and these problems and these strengths and these skills. And you have a unique set of combination of skills to deal with the unique set of challenges and problems that come your way. Nobody else can deal with the problems and challenges that you have in the way that you will. And it's like when you go to the gym, you push against the weights and they give you resistance. And then you push against the weights, your muscles start growing. And so these challenges that we experience in life are resistance for us to grow by pushing against and overcoming the challenge that allows you to grow because you realize something, you understand something, you trust yourself with something. You go, oh my God, I didn't realize I could do that.
Mm.
So all these opportunities to become the person to almost discover your own strength and your own skills and your own ability by going through that challenge and going like, wow, I can't believe I did that. And finding that trust in yourself to be able to eventually be that person who encourages other people to go, you can do it too. If I can do it, you can do it because, we have similar circumstances or we have similar, journeys or healings or, people that resonate with you. But you can then become somebody who is an inspiration, who is a beacon to other people. And I truly believe that, like, I've been through all of the journey of hardships and struggles and challenges in my life to become the beacon for other people to show them, like, if I can do it, you can do it too because it's not
Yes, the
about the challenges that I've been through specifically, but it's about the character and the ability to get through it. And a lot of that comes from just taking the first step.
yeah, and being resilient. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. It's been really interesting. Any final thoughts for the viewers?
Yeah. Um, Self-worth isn't something that you earn, it's something that you reclaim. And I think that's really important to realize. It's like it's you have left parts of yourself behind, and those are parts, those superpowers that you can reclaim in yourself by getting into that route, getting into that, but it requires you to sit with it. So my question is, are you ready?
Mm. Ready to remember who you are as well.
Exactly.
A soul having a human experience.
Yeah, 100%. And the last thing to leave everyone with is just remember to give yourself permission to pause.
Yeah. And more often as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Great. Well, I'll put all the links underneath for people to get in touch with you and develop on their path.
Yeah, and please go and try the stress pattern test. It's on our website, quantumbetter.co.uk, and it'll be the first thing that you see. And I would love if you could all give it a try and learn more about yourself. And it's completely for free.
So it's a win-win.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks a lot. Great to chat to you.
So much, Corinne. It's been lovely to talk to you today. I really appreciate you taking this time to interview me, and I look forward to speaking to you more.
Thanks a lot. Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye.